December 21st, 1942. The water is as black as oil when convoy JW51B slips away from the Scottish coast. The cold wind cuts through the rigging, sharp enough to steal your breath. 15 merchant ships disappear into the North Atlantic darkness, their hulls riding low beneath the weight of war. On board are 2,000 American-built trucks, 202 tanks with fresh paint still drying on their armor, 87 fighter planes dismantled and crated, 33 bombers that have never tasted the sky, and 24,000 tons of fuel that smells like hope and desperation. All told, 54,000 tons of cargo that might mean the difference between survival and collapse for the Red Army, bleeding out around Stalingrad. The escorts are thin, just 2 corvettes and a pair of trawlers converted for submarine hunting. Their crews know what's waiting out there in the frozen dark, but orders are orders, and the Russians are dying by the thousands. Someone has to get this convoy through. The destroyer escorts peel away at Iceland, their job done. On Christmas Eve, the 14th destroyer flotilla takes over, 6 British warships under Captain Robert Sherbrook. They cross the Arctic Circle and the temperature plummets. Ice forms on the gun barrels, on the railings, on the faces of men who haven't slept in days. They're in the teeth of it now, deep in German territory. Every man aboard remembers what happened to convoy PQ-17 that summer. The order came to scatter, and the U-boats picked them off like wounded animals, one by one. This time, Captain Sherbrook has different orders. Defend the convoy or die trying. There is no third option. Across the Norwegian Sea, in the sheltered waters of Altenfjord, Vice Admiral Oscar Cummins watches his crews prepare. The heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper gleams with menace, her 8-inch guns capable of tearing a destroyer in half. Beside her, the pocket battleship Lützow waits like a caged predator. She was renamed from Deutschland because Hitler couldn't bear the embarrassment if a ship bearing Germany's name went to the bottom. She carries 11-inch guns, weapons that could obliterate a merchant convoy in minutes. The plan is called Operation Rainbow. It's audacious, maybe too audacious. The Führer himself approved it, but his orders are contradictory. Strike hard, but take no risks. Engage the enemy, but only if you're certain of victory. It's the kind of order that breeds hesitation, but Cummins is a professional. He'll make it work. 6 destroyers will escort the heavy ships, steel wolves hunting in a pack. All they need now is for the British convoy to wander into their trap. On December 27th, the pieces slide into place. The convoy zigzags east-northeast at a crawling 8 knots. 150 miles east of Jan Mayen Island, the weather closes in. Fog thick as wool, waves as tall as houses, but they're not alone. 50 miles to the north, the light cruisers HMS Sheffield and HMS Jamaica patrol in the darkness. Their called force are a covering force ready to respond if things go wrong. The Admiralty remembers what happened to HMS Edinburgh, torpedoed earlier that year because she was stationed too close to her convoy, an easy target. So force R keeps its distance, close enough to help, far enough to stay invisible. Nobody knows that a German reconnaissance plane has already spotted them. A Focke-Wulf 200 flying out of Norway radios the convoy's position and course. In Altenfjord, Vice Admiral Cummins smiles. The entrance to the Barents Sea is narrow, just 225 miles wide because of the Arctic ice cap. Even in the growing darkness, he knows exactly where the British will be. By December 28th, the convoy has pushed another 140 miles northeast. A force 8 gale scatters the merchant ships like leaves. The destroyers spend the entire next day chasing down stragglers, rounding them up one by one. Exhausted crews work in shifts that never end. What they don't know is that U-354 has been shadowing them since mid-morning, a ghost slipping through the black water. The U-boat captain makes his sighting report, and minutes later, it's received aboard Admiral Hipper. Cummins briefs his officers, warning his battle group to be ready to sail on 3 hours' notice. Below decks, U-354 lines up her shot, 3 torpedoes launch from long range. but the convoy reaches a turn in its zigzag pattern at exactly the wrong moment. The torpedoes streak past harmlessly, and the submarine is left out of position, cursing and reloading. Just before 5 p.m., Hitler gives his authorization. The German warships erupt into motion. Admiral Hipper leads with Lützow following. 6 destroyers spread out in escort formation. Among them are 3 massive Narvik-class destroyers, armed with 5.9-inch guns, the same caliber as light cruisers. Their firepower could shred a British destroyer in seconds. Together, they form a strike force that could annihilate an undefended convoy. The dark shapes of the German capital ships slip away from the Norwegian coast, cutting through the swell at 24 knots, spray freezing on their bows. Every man aboard knows this could be the battle that changes everything. The Germans make steady progress through the night of December 30th. Approaching the suspected location of the convoy, Comet splits his force into 2 groups for a pincer movement. Admiral Hipper and 3 destroyers steam ahead, while Lützow and her 3 escorts break off to the east. The plan is elegant and brutal. Hipper will appear from the north and threaten the convoy, drawing off the British escorts. Then, while the destroyers are occupied, Lützow will emerge from the south and massacre the defenseless merchant ships. Comet keeps his search radars switched off to avoid detection. Silence and surprise are his greatest weapons. At 6 a.m. on December 31st, Hipper's group sends 3 destroyers ahead to scout. At 7:18 a.m., lookouts aboard Hipper spot 2 dark shapes on the horizon. Half an hour later, another shape materializes from the fog. This must be the target. Comet orders Hipper to close and confirm. And there it is, the full convoy spread out like a gift. At 8 a.m., Lützow's group also reports sighting the convoy from the south. Everything is in position. It's perfect. This far north, magnetic interference makes compasses nearly useless. There's no visible horizon, and thick clouds obscure the stars. Navigation officers rely on dead reckoning. The fact that Comet has placed both surface groups in perfect position is a display of masterful seamanship. Still, the German admiral holds off, waiting for the polar dawn to give his gunners just a little more light. He wants to see the whites of their eyes. Unaware of the threat, the convoy proceeds at 8 knots. A few ships are still separated after the storm, and several escorts are out searching for them. The British also keep their radars switched off to avoid revealing their position. Both sides are hunting blind in the Arctic darkness. Then, at 8:30 a.m., everything changes. Hums obdurate spots to unidentified ships and reports it to the flagship, HMS Onslow. Captain Sherbrook orders obdurate to investigate. After nearly an hour, obdurate closes to 4.5 miles and flashes a challenge with her signal lamp. The German destroyers reply with gunfire. The first shells scream overhead, and obdurate heels hard to starboard, dodging the salvo. Her radio crackles. Enemy in sight. Destroyers join me. Sherbrook tears back through the convoy aboard Onslow with HMS Orwell following. Hums AKTs and the corvettes make smoke, thick white chemical clouds that shroud the merchant ships and shepherd them east. But in doing so, AKT silhouettes herself against her own smoke screen. 8 miles away, aboard Admiral Hipper, the gunnery officer slews the main batteries onto the elderly destroyer and opens fire. 8-inch guns thunder across the water. The second salvo straddles AKTs, and shrapnel tears through her hull. The passageways fill with injured men, blood on the deck plates, the smell of cordite and burnt metal. Sherbrook spots the flash of Hipper's guns and brings his destroyers around. 3 German destroyers slip in astern of the cruiser, and HMS Onslow opens fire at 9:41 a.m. with her 4.7-inch guns. A turret is jammed with ice, and the gun crews batter it with empty shell casings, their hands numb, their faces raw from the freezing spray. Unfazed, Admiral Hipper continues engaging AKTs. Sherbrook leads his flotilla through a full circle, mimicking a torpedo attack to scare off the German cruiser. It's a bluff. They're not close enough yet to launch their torpedoes for real, but Cummins doesn't know that. Fearing torpedoes, he turns Hipper away. At 9:49 a.m., with the cruiser concealed by weather, Sherbrook brings his destroyers east to avoid being drawn too far from the convoy. If Hipper attacks aggressively, there's little he can do to stop her. His only hope is force R, and 39 miles to the north. Rear Admiral Burnett aboard HMS Sheffield has seen the gun flashes in the distance. He orders his 2 cruisers to turn south, breaking into a 31-knot charge. Sherbrook just needs to keep the convoy alive until they can reach him. Just hold on. Admiral Hipper emerges periodically from the squalls to fire broadsides at the destroyers. Sherbrook makes a risky but wise decision. He detaches HMS Obedient and then HMS Obdurate to reinforce the thinly protected convoy. He accepts the risk of leaving HMS Orwell and his own Onslow behind to keep the heavy cruiser occupied. To destroyers against a heavy cruiser, it's madness, but it's the only play he has. Cummins is impressed by the British destroyer handling. The convoy is now fully screened by the smoke from the battered Acadies. He has no idea what Lützow is doing, but he hopes she's in position, lying in wait for the fleeing convoy. And at 10:13 a.m., the battle is about to take another dramatic turn.